Hello, spicy people of the internet, Spice8Rack here, aka the alternative to the Electoral College, and welcome back to the channel. Now, Commander Legends, a set that fans of Magic the Gathering story from all over the world are excited about, has just, or is just about to, drop, depending on how long it takes me to edit this video. And in the set, we have characters that we have been waiting to see put to card for years. We have brand new characters who we're all really excited to see how they grow, and there's something for everybody. Now, there are over 100 different individual and unique legendary creatures in Commander Legends, and unless you have an encyclopedic knowledge of all of Magic the Gathering's storylines, planes, characters and events, there's a good chance that for at least some of them you have no bloody clue who these people actually are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each of these characters for you, and I'm going to do it in a very accessible capacity. So if you're brand new to Magic the Gathering, if you don't know about the various different Phyrexian invasions of Dominaria, don't worry, I'm going to take you through that. I'm also doing this for the benefit of my dear old mum who, frankly, Johan, I'm getting a bit sick and tired of your response to any time I send you a video of mine being, Connor, I don't understand who any of these characters are. What's going on? I don't get it. Like give a damn about my job, maybe? I'm not just an internet clown. But I also wanted to say before we kick off that this video is sponsored by channelfireball.com and is brought to you thanks to the support of my lovely patrons who make it possible for me to do this as my full-time job. And with all of that out of the way, as well as my acknowledgement that this video obviously has been visually inspired by Bricky's phenomenal 2 videos explaining Warhammer 40k's factions, please go check them out. And with all of that out of the way, let's now break down every single legendary creature in Commander Legends, including the ones we've seen before and the new ones as well, both of those things. That's not the title of the video. Start the video! So we're going to kick off in alphabetical order. I've got my notes here, and let's just start with the very first one, which is the Abomination of Llanowar, which in my notes, the very first line is horrid spooky bullshit, so I hope you can ascertain the level of quality that this in-depth lore analysis is going to go into. The Abomination of Llanowar is what can only be described as an elf boar. It was created out of a metastasized heart of dark magic deep in the heart of Llanowar Forest, which is on the plane of Dominaria. Now, this dark magic was probably caused either by the Cabal, which is this... well, it's a cabal of, demon-worshipping clerics who live on Dominaria, or it's leftover corruption from one of the many Phyrexian attempts to invade and conquer Dominaria. Now, Phyrexia is this society, I guess you could say, of creatures that lived on a plane called Phyrexia and attempted to invade and conquer and assimilate Dominaria across many, many years. To give you an idea of what a Phyrexian is, imagine a copy of the bell curve as illustrated by H.R. Geiger. Now, the Abomination itself has not been seen for many years in Llanowar. However, it is constantly brought up by older elves to scare their children into being good little elves. Effectively, there was a little troop that went off to Llanowar that was like, yo, what's going on with all this dark magic? And they disappeared. And then a second troop went to look for the first troop, and then they found this thing and were like, huh, that's bad, and all of them died except for one. So that's pretty much the Abomination of Llanowar. It's an old wives' tale, but probably very real. Aesi. Aesi is some kind of massive sea monster from an unknown plane, and note how many times I say the phrase unknown plane, because unfortunately that's going to come up a lot in this video. Aesi is one of the greatest leviathans, one of the largest beasts on this plane that is apparently overflowing with water and is ruled by deep sea monsters. So Aesi is the deep sea monster to deep sea monsters. It's not necessarily a death sentence if you come across Aesi, because oftentimes you can appease it by granting it gifts and tributes. But apparently, according to the lore that is on Wizards of the Coast official page, that doesn't always work, and it has sometimes been known to accept gifts and then attack you anyway. Which kind of means that all of Aesi's lore can be summed up in this clip.
Happy birthday, bitch!
So you just gonna bring me a birthday gift on my birthday to my birthday party on my birthday with a birthday gift?
Happy birthday?
Akiri. Okay, so Akiri, we've actually recently seen Akiri on the plane of Zendikar. Now, Zendikar is this a great plane of wild magic, of floating rocks, of hidden caves. Imagine Pandora from Avatar, but less blue? Bad analogy, but the one I'm going with. Akiri is a line slinger, effectively a adrenaline junkie rock climber who swings through ravines and across mountain tops using hooks and grappling hooks and ropes and all of that. But she's not just a thrill seeker, she is actually a veteran of the Zendikar Eldrazi War, which is this war that happened between the denizens of Zendikar and the three Eldrazi Titans, who are these kind of like Cthulhu meets Galactus meets really bad limescale kind of monsters. But anyway, they went through the plane, they killed a bunch of people, eventually they were defeated by a group of planeswalkers, and Akiri was not one of the casualties of that war. She fought in it, she survived, she's a survivor. And the last time we saw her, she was actually working with another planeswalker, a planeswalker called Nihiri, to try and find the Lithomancy core, which supposedly is this grand artifact that is going to heal all of Zendikar from all of the Eldrazi corruption. Unfortunately, towards the end of that story, Akiri realizes that this core is less of like a terraforming engine and much more an ancient core super weapon, and so tries to stop Nihiri. Nihiri kicks her off a mountain. Then Nissa and Jace, two other planeswalkers, Nissa and Jace save her before she hits the floor. So Akiri's just swinging around. She's having a grand old time. She's living her best life. We love her. Akroma. Okay, so actually, hang on. Actually, Wizards of the Coast very generously sent me this Magic the Gathering Legends, a visual history book, as written by Jay Anelli, and it's very, very nice, very glossy, and it's got a few of the legendary characters that we are going to be having a look at. So I thought for them, when they appear in the book, I'm just going to read what's here, because where better to learn the lore of wizards than from wizards? There was a better line to do, but this is a long... Akroma. The warrior angel Akroma is unique among the angels of the multiverse. She was originally created by the illusionist Ixidor in the image of his dead love, slain by the evil organization known as the Cabal. Upon Ixidor's death, Akroma founded a religion devoted to him, drawing people from across the plane to her service. Akroma waged war against the Cabal and finally tracked down her creator's murderer. In a bizarre confluence, Akroma and the killer were merged into a single magical being, the false god called Corona. Corona with a K, don't demonetize me, YouTube. Who terrorized the plane Akroma had sought to protect. When the god was defeated, Akroma did not return, although her people have memorialized her as a symbol of righteous vengeance. Story time with Spice8Rack. Alena and Halana. So I'm doing these two together because whilst obviously they are two separate cards, Commander Legends has a prominent partner mechanic, and oftentimes creatures that partner together are actually linked in some way in their lore. Isn't that a bit nice? Oh, look at me doing a little bit of Ludo narrative. Oh. Strange voices aside, Alena and Halana are a pair of monster hunters from Innistrad, which is kind of the Bram Stoker plane, which at some point became the H.P. Lovecraft plane when one of those Eldrazi from earlier kind of like turned up. Nihiri was the one who brought that monster as well. Don't trust Nahiri, just don't. Bad for your health. But Alena and Halana are a pair of monster hunters. We met them in the Shadows over Innistrad story when all of that Eldrazi corruption was just beginning. They've been on a couple of pieces of flavor text together, and they mainly specialize in hunting the various ghouls and monsters that inhabit Innistrad. They take on stitched together zombies. They slay corrupted angels, and Alharu, roo, pen pineapple, shake the tree. Alharu is a monk from an unknown plane who can hear the voices of the dead. Now, as a kid, this absolutely terrified them, but as they grew up, they realized that this was actually their calling. And so now what they do is they travel their plane seeking unquiet ghosts to bring them to their final rest. Alharu is also the first human character in Magic the Gathering who is non-binary, which is really good because it's nice to get a slight change of pace from all of the non-binary representation we've got thus far being either one elf or various smoke creatures. So thanks, Wizards of the Coast, for doing the bare minimum. Amareth. Okay, brand new character, so I'm just going to read what Wizards of the Coast has put on their own website. On a distant plane, when dragons age, their scales harden over time, turning into a beautiful crystal. Amareth has been around for a long time, longer than any other dragon, and she takes immense pride in her glistening scales. So much pride, in fact, that she takes no interest in hoarding boring gold. She exclusively hoards gems and crystals as lustrous as her... This is just Seath the Scaleless with the serial numbers filed off. Anara, some kind of highly respected wolf from an unknown plane. However, I speculate that she might actually be from the same plane as Eula, Queen Among Bears. It is either that, or that Jesper Edging simply loves drawing animals with horns. Araumi. Araumi is royalty of a small merfolk kingdom of an unknown plane, but she dreamt of there being more than just her merfolk palaces and her merfolk aristocracy, so she ran away from home, dreaming of the human world, and she swam and she found a boat, and it was full of humans, and she clambered aboard, and the humans welcomed her, and Araumi told them of her home and regaled them with stories of this merfolk kingdom. And that's where the similarities to Little Mermaid end, because it turns out that the humans that Araumi met were pirates, and so they immediately tied her up, turned the boat around, sailed to her kingdom, looted it and razed it to the ground, at which point Araumi's dark inner depths magic sort of ignited, and she drowned all of the pirates, turning them into her undead thralls, and now she sort of hangs out in the ocean looking for pirates to do the exact same too, which is actually kind of fucking badass. I like this character a lot. Archelos and Kwain. Archelos is this ancient turtle shaman from an unknown plane who just sits around in his swamp trying to vibe with nature, trying to learn about the majesty of the natural world and all of its magics. And Kwain is this zippy bastard hare who just runs around the plane taunting people, challenging them to mind duels and races and all that manner of stuff. And when these two met, they annoyed each other to all hell. Effectively, Archelos is trying to sit there, trying to meditate, and Kwain is everyone that I meet has some kind of incredible reaction whenever I challenge them to something or whenever I'm just in the room, and this turtle is literally not doing anything, and so now they are destined until effectively one of them dies to torment each other for eternity. It's tortoise and the hare. It's tortoise and the hare. It's that's the whole deal with these characters. It's a reference. Ardenn, a core from the plane of Zendikar, again another core from Zendikar, who is obsessed with exploring the farthest reaches of the sky claves, which are these kind of distant floating fortress treasure troves that have only recently begun to descend from the sky or rise up from the depths of the ocean in the aftermath of the Zendikar Eldrazi war. Ardenn is obsessed with reaching the farthest chambers and uncovering the rarest loot. He is effectively Indiana Jones if you scared him really, really badly one time. Armix. Armix is an experimental golem created by the Ethereum sculptor Brea on the plane of Alara. And actually, Brea is in this book, so let me just find her. The hot-tempered young wizard Brea was an Ethereum sculptor of great skill, blending the delicate-looking metal with living flesh. Following the reunion of Alara, many mages of Brea's homeland journeyed to wider Alara to discover the secret of this magical metal. Not one to be left out, Brea set out on her own journey. Trusting her instincts over her intellect, Brea journeyed deep within the dragon-infested jungles of Jund. There she discovered the legendary missing ingredient, the key to making new Ethereum. Returning with her discovery, Brea is the first to have created new Ethereum in centuries, perhaps millennia. Armed with a fortune's worth of this once rare metal, the world is Brea's for the taking. And Armix is a golem that Brea created with this new metal, who went fucking ballistic and started killing everything. But Brea loved it. Brea thought it was a great success, so she kept Armix around as her personal, I guess, like, robotic bodyguard. And that's pretty much Armix's lore. It's a weapon. Averna, an elemental kin from an unknown plane who was created in the aftermath of a mana quake. What's a mana quake? I don't fucking know. They didn't tell me. Unfortunately, that's honestly kind of it for Averna. There's not really much that's given. That we can't really discern anything from her artwork. I like her top. Belbe. It's Belbe, baby! Alright, Belbe is a Boros Legion ghost. Now, the Boros Legion is one of the 10 guilds of a plane called Ravnica, and Ravnica is this Ecumepolis plane, this plane that's completely covered in a city, and he is a ghost that serves the military police, effectively, of that city. He is a character from the original story of Ravnica, when Ravnica was first introduced to us as a set in Magic, and he is the ghost partner of Argus Kos, who was this washed up, deadbeat Boros Marshal who accidentally kind of saved Ravnica 3 times in a row and then died and became a ghost, and also saved Ravnica when he was a ghost as well. Belbe, it's Belbe, baby! All of the B characters, I'm just going to be doing that. It's so much fun to do. Belbe is the daughter of Eladamri, who was this elf warlord on the plane of Wrath, this kind of artificial world created by Phyrexians as a means of taking over Dominaria by like fusing the 2 planes of existence together. Belbe was Eladamri's daughter, and was kidnapped by Phyrexians and kind of turned into a Phyrexian CCTV camera where they installed like the eye of Yawgmoth, their leader, into her so that he could oversee the selection of the next Evankar, or kind of like warlord of Wrath. And it was between a guy called Krovax and a guy called Urtai, and boy, don't you just love 2-party systems. Krovax kind of cooed his way to the top, and Belbe ended up being killed by her father, Eladamri, but not before falling deeply in love with Urtai. What them hands do, Urtai? I hate that. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to take that out of the video. Blim! It's Blim, baby! It's so much fun to do! Blim is a Rakdos imp, Rakdos being one of the 10 guilds of Ravnica, who thinks of himself as being this once-in-a-lifetime comedic genius. And boy, does he slay his audiences. He's a murderer. He just murders. He's a murderer, and he's not very funny. Brago! Oh, it's another one for the books! King Brago, and I'm going to read this as an aristocrat. In life, King Brago was a sly politician and firebrand orator, beloved by his people. Over the years, he built a strong coalition on reformation and eliminating corruption, until he was elevated to the position of king. After spending his life earning the crown, Brago decided that his reign would not be cut short by the tragedy of terminal illness, and took steps to ensure his life beyond death. Upon his death, the once fierce defender of liberty, the King Defender of Liberty, alright, fine, The once fierce defender of liberty became an eternal tyrant. Brago's despotic turn left his opponent scrambling for solutions, until one day Kaya, a ghost assassin planeswalker, appeared in the throne room, slaying the so-called eternal king. A king who loves liberty? Fuck, I didn't know that he was like, oh, I love liberty. I love liberty. I'm gonna become the king. Great. Fucking wonderful. I love workers. I'm gonna become an employer. Sweet. Breeches. It's Breeches, baby!
Monkey goblins, they're monkey goblins. Monkey goblins, they're monkey goblins. Monkey goblins, they're monkey goblins.
One of Vraska's crew members, a Gorgon planeswalker, when she was a pirate captain on Ixalan. Ixalan being this fun kind of Jolly Roger meets Aztecs meets vampire colonialism kind of plane. He was Vraska's most talented gunner and not tire, which I love as a little bit of detail. And he was also had a brief appearance in the War of the Spark novel right at the beginning, which makes him the only good thing to happen in that entire book. Brinelin! I'm not actually that excited about Brinelin, so I'm going to not baby him. A kraken that lives in Akum, which is a place on Zendikar, who Nissa and Sorin, Nissa being an elf planeswalker, Sorin being a weeb planeswalker, had to get past on their way to try and reseal the Eldrazi in their eternal, or so-called eternal mountain prison. Sorin sacrificed a goblin to him to try and get past, which fucking bullshit move there, Sorin, not keen on that. And Nissa managed to persuade Brinelin to let them pass by informing the ancient Kraken of the death of one of his closest elf friends. And the Kraken was like, oh, I'm really sad now. Least I can do is let you get past and let you go sort out all of this Eldrazi nonsense. Bruce Tull! It's Bruce Tull! B! Woo! iPad. Bruce Tull, just a rude cattle herder. That's it. That's all of his lore. He's a man with a moustache who fucking hates his sheep. They won't go fast enough for him. He keeps insulting them. He keeps calling them names. Everybody loves Bruce Tull, and I am everybody. Captain Vargus Wrath, a captain of a pirate crew on the plane of Ixalan and part of the Brazen Coalition, which is kind of this mishmash of nautical refugees from a continent that was taken over by vampires who kind of joined together in this, like, democratic confederacy of pirate folk, and now they just go around the open seas, looting and pillaging and drinking rum and having a grand old time. Vargus Wrath is a captain of a ship, but he's also kind of a sub-captain of the like admiral, I guess, who is Ripley Vance, who was a pirate captain who forsook forsook. We'll go with forsook. Who forsook the open seas of Ixalan and instead retired to a fortress on what can only be described as Fuck You Mountain. Colfenor! Colfenor's got his own card! Yeah! Colfenor, alright. Colfenor is this super old, super wise tree folk from the plane of Lorwyn, which is the best plane in all of Magic the Gathering, because it's just the magical wandering around Salisbury's Plain kind of world. It's just a grand old time. Colfenor, we have been waiting for Colfenor to get his own card for many, many years. Finally he has it. Colfenor's story, right? He was this wise tree folk who foresaw that this thing called the Great Aurora was going to hit Lorwyn, and what happens with the Great Aurora is Lorwyn gets transformed from this lovely, it's always like a late summer's afternoon, it gets transformed from that into like Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, but dropped in a puddle. It turns into a horrible, horrible place. Colfenor saw that was going to happen, and so he gathered together this ragtag group of different people from around the plane. You had an elf called Reese, you had a flamekin called Ashling, you had the Vendilion clique, you had Brigid, who was a Kithkin, all sorts of people. And he set them up with this one task, which was, I'm going to give you my last seed. No, he's a tree folk, all right? He's a tree. I'm going to give you people my seed, and I want you to go and plant my seed in a murmuring brosk. It's called the murmuring brosk, all right? They went and planted his seed in the Murmuring Brosk, and when they came back to sort of like let him know that A, it's been planted, but B, the whole place was kind of on fire, not sure what happened with that, Aisling, the Flamekin, kind of set Colfenor on fire and burned him to a crisp and he was dead. But when the Great Aurora hit, turns out that seed that they planted of Colfenor, boy, he's got a potent seed, that man. It popped up immediately. The sapling of Colfenor was around, and that sapling, that little baby tree folk, she was absolutely essential to reversing the Great Aurora that hit Lauren and turning it into sort of like a combination between Shadowmoor and Lauren, a sort of like a compromise between the two realms. That's Colfenor's story, and I'm a happy man! He's got a card! Danitha Capuchin, the descendant of the Dominarian hero Gerard Capuchin, who is this... Oh, hang on, no, he's in the book! He's in the bloody book! The noble young Gerard Capuchin joined the crew of the skyship Weatherlight in an effort to discover the secrets of his past. Valiant and daring, Gerard was always at the front lines, leading crews into battle. As the Weatherlight discovered Phyrexia's plans for Dominaria, Gerard learnt the haunting truth. He was engineered by the planeswalker Urza to be the perfect soldier to lead his ancient war against Phyrexia. Gerard's a eugenics baby, and the story kind of makes out that eugenics is kind of a good and necessary thing in some scenarios. We're not going into that now. I've got a whole video on my channel about that, so go. When Gerard rejected a deal from Phyrexia's dark god Yawgmoth, he turned to the last remaining hope for his plane, a weapon of terrible power with a great cost. To save his world from destruction and defeat Yawgmoth, Gerard sacrificed himself. Centuries later, he is honoured and hailed as one of the greatest heroes his plane has ever produced. His courage and inspiration for every generation that followed. Storytime with Spice8Rack. Anyway, Danitha is Gerard's like great granddaughter, and one day this character called Joyra pops over to Danitha and is like, hey, we found the Weatherlight. It was just like in the bins out back. We put it together. Do you want to jump back on it? And Danitha was like, I'm kind of dealing with the Cabal over here in Benalia, but I'll send my shit brother in my stead. That's pretty much her story. Dargo. Dargo is a giant with a dream. The dream of being a famous pirate captain. The issue is, Dargo is very big. He's a very big boy. Gets on a boat. It usually sinks pretty soon after, and then he swims back to the island that he's kind of stuck on, and he waits for more boats to turn up. And that's him. That's his character. He's got a nice hat. He's poor Dargo. We feel very sorry for the poor boy. Derevi. Derevi is in the book. Hang on. The Aven savant Derevi is known as the greatest general Alara has ever seen, and for good reason. Above the battlefield, her sharp eyes and cunning wit allow her to quickly maneuver her troops, or respond directly when her lines falter. Off the battlefield, her keen intellect has allowed her to negotiate her way out of being assassinated on more than one occasion. Which I'm not sure how one negotiates out of being assassinated. I'll give you the trade deal. Better not assassinate me though. You better not do it. I'm a bird wizard. Don't do it. Don't do it. This bit's gone on far too long. Eligeth, a very smart sphinx from yet another unknown plane. Eligeth stumbled across this great cosmic secret that was supposed to be completely unknowable, and that triggered something inside of them, and now they live 5 minutes in the future. I'll read what Wizards has put on their website. To put it simply, if you were to speak with Eligeth, he would have already had the conversation with you and experienced every possible permutation said conversation could take. Therefore, to you, it might seem like he is completely uninterested in everything you have to say, but in reality, he's already heard you out infinite times and has answered your question as thoroughly and as thoughtfully as possible. You just exist in the wrong timeline to hear the answer, which, as I'm reading it out, sounds like copy pasta I'd find in my Twitter replies when I try and talk to incels. Esior and the general familiar cycle. Esior, Phalathis, Kethis, the horse one. All of these familiars don't really have much lore attached to them that doesn't really like go past what you can see in their art. Helpful bird, mean cat, warm lizard. They're kind of just a mechanical cycle, which is a bit disappointing. Like even just saying, you know, this like bird is Gadwick's like favorite messenger pigeon or something like that would have been quite nice, but unfortunately we just don't have any lore for these folks apart from the fact that they're just helpful to very specific mages. Ghen is a weaver, a magic weaver wizard who can take a spell as it's being cast and like turn it into something else. So like you'll try and cast like a firebolt and he'll take it and he'll go, aha, it's a unicorn now, and everybody hates him. It's even in his lore that like he doesn't have many friends because he keeps pulling this shit at parties. That's pretty much his entire lore. The only other thing I'll say is that he's gonna look amazing in foil. Ooh! The ghost of Ramirez Pietro, which I keep reading as Ramirez de Pirato. This ghost is the ghost of a old Dominarian pirate. We're talking 3,000 years before the Brothers' War, which was the original event of the actual game Magic the Gathering, and the Brothers' War itself took place over 10,000 years before like the current modern event of Magic the Gathering. So this is an old-ass pirate. I don't really know what unfinished business could have possibly kept this folk from like sticking around, but boy have they not aged gracefully at all. Anara. Anara is an elf of the Wirewood Forest, which is this sparsely populated and sparsely wooded forested area on the continent of Otaria, which I've been reliably informed translates to dumbass in Portuguese, which is just slightly below Nicole Bolas translating to Nicole Balls in Portuguese as well. Magic the Gathering is not a kind... does not do kindly when translated to Portuguese. Anyway, Anara is an elf of the Wildwood Forest, and Otaria is a very significant continent in Dominaria. I can see my cam op just giggling. They're Portuguese, and they keep smiling every time I say Otaria. Anara is an elf of the Wildwood Forest. And Otaria is a very significant continent on Dominaria because that is where the saga involving the Mirari takes place, which is the same saga that Akroma, from right at the start of the video, sort of like finds herself in. Effectively, at some point in the storyline, a guy called Kamal, who we will talk about a little bit later, planted the Mirari in the form of a sword deep inside the forest of Krosa, thinking that he was hiding the Mirari from all who would want to find it. Unfortunately, the Mirari was like, oh, I'm in the floor. I'm going to start talking to the earth, and began corrupting the entire continent, drawing in animals, mutating them. Krosa was one of the most affected places on the entire continent, but the Wirewood Forest as well was similarly affected. And we can actually see this in the flavor text of Anara, where she says that, ooh, there's something in the land and it's calling us. That's the Mirari. Glacian and Rebek. Okay, I'm going to be really, really brief with these two because, as I said before, I have an entire video about eugenics on my channel, but it also goes into specifically Glacian, Rebek, and Yawgmoth's sort of like origin story, their lore. So if you'd like to find out like a really in-depth version of them, please go check out the video. The link will be on screen at some point. But suffice to say that these two were very famous and very well-renowned Thran engineers who, during the ascension of Yawgmoth, when he transformed from sort of like humble cleric to death god of Phyrexia, these two kind of unwittingly helped him in his ascension, and both died during the final explosion that sealed Phyrexia from Dominaria and also destroyed the Thran city of Halcyon. Gnostro. I'm gonna say my neighbours are doing lawn renovation, so we'll see if we can get through this character without having to wait for them to stop hammering on their patio. Gnostro, a chimera of the ancient Greek-inspired plane of Theros, who resides in the Katachon Mountains. Each of Gnostro's 3 heads does something different to help it find and destroy prey. Its owl head, its screech can project forward in time, meaning Nostro can stay ahead of anything that it's trying to fight. Its wolf's head emits blazes of flame, eruptions of lava that can char foes within seconds. And its horse head whinnies and snorts with the power to heal any wound. You want another go at... You want another shot at that? No? No? Okay, antiseptic horse noises it is. Gore Muldrak is just a man who fucking loves salamanders. That's it. He fucking loves them, and you can't tell him otherwise. That's his entire lore. Moving on. Hamza, an elephant warrior from the plain of Tarkir, and I'm gonna have to... In fact, hang on. It's in the book! It's in the book! Tarkir. The course of Tarkir's history begins on Dominaria with the elder dragon twins Ugin and Nicobolus, balls in Portuguese. Planeswalkers both, Nicobolus slew his brother in a rage. Ugin was reborn and restored as the spirit dragon and found a home on the plane of Tarkir, far away from his evil brother. On Tarkir, Ugin's presence sparked elemental storms, spawning new dragons from dragon tempests. To bring balance, Ugin gifted the 5 human clans magical powers equal to the marauding dragons. Nicobolus discovered his brother was still alive and plotted against him, and so he appeared on Tarkir to kill his brother once more. Upon Ugin's death, the dragon tempest ceased, and the 5 clans were able to slaughter the remaining dragons. More than 1,000 years later, dragons were nothing but a memory, and the clan leaders, known as Khans, reigned supreme. The extinct dragons sparked an obsession in the planeswalker Sarkhan Vol, who returned to Tarkir with a fragment of the Eye of Ugin, the magical nexus of the Eldrazi prison on Zendikar. You can see why I need to explain some of this shit. Like, my mother doesn't understand any of this. Why don't you understand any of this, mother? Approaching Ugin's bones, Sarkhan was transported in time to mere hours before Ugin's death. This time, when Ugin fell, Sarkhan was there. Ugin's body was encased in massive hedrons to recover. When Sarkhan returned to the future, he found that the Dragon Tempest had spawned out of control during Ugin's recovery, and the plane was dominated by 5 Dragon Lords in place of the Khans. None but Sarkhan knew that history had been changed. That's Tarkir. I love the Tarkir of old. So when I say the Tarkir of old, I'm talking about Tarkir in the past, when Ugin and Nicobolus fought. When I say the new Tarkir, I'm talking about the dragons of Tarkir, the one ruled by the dragons. And when I talk about, I don't know, the good Tarkir, I'm talking about the Tarkir where all of the dragons were extinct. Fuck Dragons of Tarkir and fuck Sarkhan Vol. Anyway, Hamza. All of this to explain an elephant. Hamza was an elephant warrior on the good Tarkir. Hamza was an orphan both raised by the Abzan and turned into an orphan by the Abzan. They raided his family, they killed his family, they abducted him as a child, and they raised him to be an Abzan. And he now uses his vast strength to, quote, repay the clan that had taken him in. Which is just quite fucked, frankly. Hans Eriksson, my baby boy, come back from war. If you have been playing Magic for any amount of time, you will be aware of certain memes and tropes within the game. You know, Fibblefit being lost and turning up in different places, Homelands being a bad set. The fact that you can send the entire player base into a frothing rage simply by putting the words Mox or Lotus on an otherwise mediocre card. The usual. But Hans has been a running gag and a character that people have wanted to actually see in the game since he was first mentioned in flavor text back in 1995. There have been people who have wanted to see a Hans Eriksson card since before I was born, and that's really strange and wild to think about. Hans is most well known actually for his sister, Safi. The haunting phrase,
"Ach, Hans, run! It's the Vergoif!"
is just as powerful today as it was 20 years ago. Is it 25 years ago? 25 years ago. Jesus Christ. Makes a girl think. The fact that Hans's card also draws out potentially deadly and dangerous creatures from your deck, and then they immediately attack Hans, is gorgeous flavour, as well as how Hans and Safi work together as a pair. And just for future reference, when and if Magic Fests start up again, if you turn up to like a commander table with Hans and Safi as your partner commanders, 100% I'm letting you do that because that's delightful. Ich-Tekik is a splicer on the plane of New Phyrexia. What is New Phyrexia, you ask? Well, it's like Old Phyrexia, but not that, because Old Phyrexia got blown up, and now New Phyrexia is, it was a plane called Mirrodin that was this lovely artifact plane that had the best boy that has ever lived living on it, Rip My Boy Slow Bad, and it got corrupted by this sort of glistening oil that this guy called Khan, this planeswalker called Khan, kind of left on the plane accidentally. He just sort of walked it in. It dripped out of his like chest or something, and he left it in the plane, and then it became New Phyrexia. And Ich is one of the Mirrans, one of the residents of Mirrodin that was corrupted during Mirrodin Besieged, during this mass corruption of New Phyrexia. And Ich works for one of the 5 praetors of New Phyrexia, a horrible beast called Vorinclex, who is kind of what you'd get if you taped 3 bears together, put them in a wood chipper, and then taught them to be social Darwinists. Ich-Tekik has been given like free reign to harvest organs and body parts and bits of metal and the like to improve himself and to improve his golems for the cause of Vorinclex. And you know what? Props to him for demonstrating self-care and self-love and self-improvement. Ich-Tekik, a Naga shaman of the Tarkir of old, who served the Sultai, one of the 5 clans that ruled Tarkir of old, and who battled against the dragons, specifically the brood known as the Silumgar. Now, Ich-Tekik used to serve the overlord of the Sultai, a little boy called Tassiger. However, she quickly switched allegiances when the tides of battle turned in the dragon's favour, and she became the right-hand Naga of Silumgar, translating his speech to his court, and started a long line of Naga advisors to the Dragon Lord Silumgar. Emoti, another Naga, but not from Tarkir this time. You can tell there's a slight difference in, the face is a little bit different. The colour of the scales is slightly changed. She also has 4 arms, dead giveaway. Emoti annoyingly exists on some unknown plane and is kind of a mystical Britta filter. Effectively, there was some like dark magic battle happening on her plane upstream from her tribe's water source, and then the entire river became polluted, and Emoti was like, well, I'm the only one who does like water magic, so I guess I will purify the water for the town. And now every single day she goes to like the town's waterfall and just purifies the water for everybody to drink, which I have to imagine gets really boring really quickly. And can you imagine the pruning? Ishai, the Avon translator for the Dragon Lord Ajutai on the new Tarkir, the Tarkir of today. Effectively, the bird version of Ich-Tekik. There's not really much additional lore. He at some point spoke to Narset, who is a planeswalker who was born on Tarkir, but that's really as far as his lore goes. Jared Carthalion. Okay, so Tolarian Community College already did a video about Jared on his channel when he spoiled the card. You might have heard of Tolarian Community College, small little indie Magic the Gathering channel, couple of subscribers. I'm doing the man a big favour by shouting him out on my much larger platform. Anyway, effectively go watch that video because it's really really well done, and that's pretty much what I'm basing my entire understanding of Jared's character on. But long story short, he was an orphaned boy who stole a Black Lotus, wasted it on summoning a Shivan dragon, fell in love with a planeswalker called Christina of the Woods, became a planeswalker himself, and then he continued on with his life. Sorry, I've got underneath all of that, I've just written Babading Babadooey, which I think I was supposed to say after became a planeswalker himself, but because I put it on another line, it looks like its own whole entire point. So it's just Babading Babadooey, baby. Jeska and Kamal. Woo! This is going to be a long one. Okay, so Jessica and Kamal, they are a barbarian sister and brother from the plane of Dominaria, and Kamal became obsessed with and eventually driven mad by the Mirari, this powerful artifact that we've talked about a couple of times now, but to sort of explain what it actually is, it is this orb that grants wishes to anyone who wields it, but in a kind of like cursed monkey paw type deal, right? Anyway, Kamal tried to use this power to become a local warlord, which, first off, think a little bit bigger than that, lad. So I don't rub a genie's lamp and go, oh, I'd like to be a local councillor for Bath and North East Somerset. Like, come on, dude, like, bigger thought. He also, in his, like, blind rage and, like, this corruption that the Mirari put upon him, he killed his sister, Jessica. He was then very sort of guilty about that and pissed off to a forest, and a praying mantis taught him how to forgive himself or something like that. Now, Jessica, when she died, she was actually reborn through the power of the Mirari as Phage the Untouchable, this horrible, corrupted ultra death monster who ended up going to fight in the arena as part of the Cabal, and that's where her and Ixidor sort of link up, because she was the one that killed Ixidor's love, and then Ixidor created Akroma to avenge that death. Now, when Kamal came back from the forest, he wanted to atone for what he did wrong. He'd heard about all the stuff that Phage had done, and he decided to re-kill his sister effectively. So he turned up with the Mirari sword, tried to kill her, but then, plot twist, he struck her at the exact same time as, like, Akroma got in the way, as well as a lady called Zagorka, who, wow, it sucks to be Zagorka. Anyway, when they were struck, the three women kind of merged together to form Corona, and we've already talked a little bit about Corona, but when she tried to sort of conquer Dominaria and become its new god, Kamal turned up for a third time to kill his sister. There was a big old scuffle. She eventually got stabbed with the Mirari sword and reverted back into Jessica, when finally her Planeswalker spark ignited. Hence why her card in this set is Jessica Thrice Reborn. Once as Phage, once as Corona, and once again as Jessica. Which, frankly, like, Planeswalkers of today do not know how good they've got it. Like, Gideon's like, oh, my own hubris led to the death of all of my friends, and that's what caused my Planeswalker spark to ignite. Jessica got killed 3 times by her own brother, and only on the 3rd time did she manage to become a Planeswalker. Good lord. Unfortunately, Jessica's story does not end in particularly happy, and they lived happily ever after. Note, years after Kamala died, because Kamal at this point is still a mortal, Jessica returned to Dominaria to help heal the plane when it was going through its sort of like time crisis emo phase, where all of these like different time rifts and temporal ozone holes were opening up all throughout the plane. Jessica went to Otaria and closed the great rift above the continent that had been caused during her multiple rebirths, particularly when she got rebirthed as a mini god, and she sacrificed herself to close all of those holes. Okay, Jury. Jury is the proprietor of the Rakdos cult's most popular murder, blood, torture, comedy, orgy coliseum, the Jury Review. The venue itself hosts many events, but the most popular are the bloody satires, which both figuratively and literally skewer politicians and public figures. Jury is also one of the last remaining Rakdos characters that story nerds and story fans have been waiting to see from the Rakdos cult for a very, very long time. We got Massacre Girl in War of the Spark, and finally we have Jury. So we're all very happy with how things are going for the Rakdos. Good on WotC for that one. Kangi, an Aven commander during the final Phyrexian invasion of Dominaria, fighting on the side of the Coalition, which was sort of like all the Dominarian forces, sans a couple of like idiot capitulating warlords, but also on the side of the Order, which is kind of this militant religious organization out of the continent of Otaria. Lots of stuff happens on Otaria. There's not really much to say about Kangi himself, except for the fact that, boy, he has had a massive glow up in this set. Carador. Okay, so Carador is a ghost centaur from an unknown plane, which at this point just, like, say, like, I don't know, Borkanath. Carador is from Borkanath, and Borkanath is a plane where all the dragons are made out of mist and all the people dream sideways. There we go. Boom. You don't have to visit it. Just give us a name, please. Jesus. Anyway, Carador was a chieftain of his plane, but he was usurped by a neighboring warlord and now spends his afterlife scheming and gathering ghost forces to one day retake his ancestral home as kind of like King Brago but with antlers. Karametra, the goddess of harvest on the plane of Theros, and probably the most mortal-friendly god on the entire plane, narrowly beating out Ephara, the god of the city and the god of shit, awful water transportation. She gives people food, she stops them from doing stupid shit in the field, she's got a big wolf pet. What is not to love? We love Karametra. Keskit, an Arswar underling of Sheoldred, the Whispering one of the other praetors on New Phyrexia. The white Phyrexian praetor Elish Norn actually destroyed Sheoldred's realm. I don't know if she actually destroyed Sheoldred herself, but we don't really know what, like, Keskit's whole deal is now. Is he still loyal to Sheoldred? Is he going to work behind the scenes to bring her back as one of the more powerful praetors? Or is he now switching his allegiances and he's aligning with Elish Norn? We just don't know. What we do know is he's really nasty to look at. Kodama of the East Tree, one of the many Kodama around the forests of Kamigawa that are worshipped by the monks that live there. And Kamigawa is this plane that is inspired by Japanese history and folklore. Some people just call it the Ninja Plane, which, you know, not at all massively reductive that. Anyway, this Kodama was the spirit that monks often prayed to for blessings of forestry fertility and abundance. During the Kami War, however, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but suffice to say it's where the Kami and the mortals of the world, the spirits and the mortals of the world began to fight one another, the Kodama of the East Tree began shooting the monks that used to worship it with spirit spores that sucked out the monks' souls and turned them into spirit warriors for the Kami forces. It's like that drill tweet. Yes, Kodama of the East Tree may kill lots of people, but it also ensures the monks have a plentiful apple harvest, so it's impossible to say if it's bad or not. Croc! My baby boy Croc's got his own card! Okay, so Croc is a very significant goblin on Mirrodin before all of the New Phyrexia shenanigans. He was the first goblin and potentially the first sentient creature to discover that the plane itself was in fact hollow. Now, if you know anything about the goblins on Mirrodin, you can kind of assume what happened next. Croc went back to his goblins with this cool discovery and went, hey, look at this really interesting thing. And then all the goblins went, oh, execute him. And so they did. So Croc and Slowbad, both two wonderful, wonderful goblins that get killed by other goblins for no good reason. Why do the goblins of Mirrodin produce the best characters and the worst society? I swear to God. But Croc, unlike Slowbad, kind of developed this cult around him as time went on. In fact, an entire clan of goblins ended up being named after him, the Croc clan, and his thumb remains as a legendary artifact that for some reason was not reprinted in Commander Legends. You had it right there. You printed Croc. Where's his thumb? Where's his thumb, wizards? Kraum and Ludwig. Okay, so we'll start with Ludwig. Ludwig is one of the many Frankenstein parallels that exist on Innistrad. He kind of looks a bit like if you crossed Larry David with a blobfish, and he creates many different stitched masterpieces, and Kraum is apparently his most incredible piece yet, and it neither really had that much to do in the story when they were relevant and when they were talked about, which is a bit of a shame. Although I will say, in Shadows over Innistrad, there's this entire subplot where Ludwig and Gerolf, I believe his name is, two of the Frankenstein allegories of the plane. They began just exchanging letters and going and visiting each other's workshops, but it didn't end up being this weird double cross and they betray each other or anything like that. They just ended up being really good friends, and I don't know why, but I love that so much. I love these two horrible characters that are just let's be friends. Did we just become best friends? Let's be pen pals! I love that. Kaideli. Okay, so Kaideli is a Meletician prophet, meaning that she is a prophet that comes from the city of Meletis on the plane of Theros, who was chosen by the God of Horizons, Krufix, to understand the true scope of the world that she lived in and beyond. And so Kaideli was like, you know what? Lay it on me. Tell me everything. And Krufix just went, okay, sure. The gods didn't create the mortals. It was actually the other way around. We are not the only world that exists. There actually exists a great number of worlds that sort of exist outside of our realms of understanding. However, there are people who can just sort of travel between those worlds. And in fact, you remember that god we had for a little bit, that Xenagos guy? Yeah, he was one of those planeswalkers. So was the champion of the sun that ended up killing him. Those people were like able to just travel between worlds. But that's kind of not the only thing, because there are these massive existential threats like the Eldrazi and like the Phyrexians that could just at any time turn up on our plane and completely destroy us forever and ever and ever. Is that alright for you? And then Kaideli was like, what? Lathiel. Just a unicorn. There's not really much lore. We're not given a plane. Might be from Eldraine, judging by those like little firefly bits in front of her, but that could just be unicorn sparkles. It's just a unicorn, unfortunately. There's not much to go on with her lore, I'm afraid to say. Lysa! Okay, so Lysa is the fourth sister of Avacyn on the plane of Innistrad. And I'm gonna grab the... Where's the book? Lysa was the fourth sister of Avacyn on the plane of Innistrad. So Avacyn was kind of like the godhead of the plane's religion. The Church of Avacyn worshipped Avacyn as a god. She was also created by Sorin Markov, who you'll remember we talked about, the guy who sacrificed the goblin earlier. Lots of people just creating angels and angels becoming religious icons. Seems to be a theme in Magic. Anyway, Avacyn had four sisters. She had Gisela, who was sort of like the war-ish sister. You had Bruna, which is like the sister of sort of like insight and knowledge. You had Sigarda, who is the sort of sister of mortals and just good harvests and all that good stuff. And then you had Lysa, who was the sister of Avacyn, who took like the concept of know thy enemy just that one step further and began not only sort of like surrounding herself with, but actively collaborating with demons and witches and cultists to sort of like to get behind enemy lines to prevent outbreaks of demons and horrible, nasty, dark magic before they even happened. And when Avacyn found out that Lysa was actually doing that, Avacyn went up to her and was like, listen, I might not agree with your praxis, but I have to say that it is producing good results and we're all fighting on the same team here, so good on you, sister, and I'm going to immortalize you for... Just kidding. Avacyn killed her, every single angel affiliated with her, and then banned anyone else on the plane from ever repeating her name forevermore. Good on you, Avacyn. You were definitely 100% fine before Emrakul corrupted you. Livio is kind of like... It's kind of like Fiora's Batman, Fiora being the plane of existence that the Ghost King Brago once resided over. But instead of using his vast wealth to just sort of like make a battlesuit and go beat up like street level drug dealers, instead Livio renounced his titles, renounced his inherited wealth, and decided to stick up for local merchants getting shaken down by crown-funded racketeers. So kind of like the exact opposite and strictly better version of Batman. The Maelstrom Wanderer, the very embodiment of Alara's chaotic mana conflux that sort of exploded into being when the 5 shards of Alara slotted in to place like a really satisfying trivial pursuit board. The Maelstrom Wanderer is pretty much the embodiment of that sort of chaotic mana, and now it wanders Alara specifically in like the center where all the mana is converging and is all being like, I'm gonna turn into a spell. I'm gonna turn into a planeswalker. I'm an elemental. The lore isn't particularly clear. I'm kind of riffing on that one if I'm gonna be honest. Malcolm. There's a Magic the Gathering card called Malcolm. I love that. Such a fan of it. Malcolm was the navigator on Vraska's ship, the Belligerent, when she was a pirate captain. So he was actually a contemporary of Breeches, the wonderful, wonderful goblin pirate. But he's just called Malcolm, and that's when's the fucking like Chris Planeswalker coming out? When's the new Felix legendary creature dropping, Wizards? Marath, a lovely magical badger moose bear that lives on Dominaria and is worshipped by many, many elves as being the very embodiment of nature's whims and of nature's pure magic. And it's just, you want to scratch him on the chin. He's just a boy, he's just a good boy. Not really much lore, but he's just a good boy. Oh, he's a little boy. Where's the lovely moose? Okay, Moloku. So Moloku is a moonfolk, or Soratami, which is this species of creatures that live on Kamigawa, that live in the clouds, in sort of like palaces in the cloud on that plane. And Moloku is the Soratami ambassador from the Soratami down to the human realms. On top of showcasing the true extent of Soratami drip, Moloku was also directly responsible for creating the conditions that led to the Kami Mortal War, which is a war between the spiritual realm of Kamigawa and the mortal realm of Kamigawa that was kind of kicked off when Takeda Kondo stole the daughter of the supreme Kami Okagachi and turned her into a decorative wall plate that granted immortality. Moloku also owned a dragon egg at one point, which was then stolen by the ever-charming goblin Kiki Jiki, which is both delightful and hilarious. Miara. We'll go with Miara. Miara is an elf packmaster from the plane of Lorwyn. Now, you'll remember I said that Lorwyn is this lovely, delightful wander around the moors and get a nice little cozy cream tea with your granny type plane. It is for the most part, except for the elves. Miara is a member of the sort of, I think they're called like the perfect cast of elves, which are these group of elves. All of the elves are like physically beautiful, and anything that isn't beautiful, they try and force out of their territory and their woodland, from other elves to literally any other species of creature. So there's a good chance that what Miara is about to do when we see her in her art is go off and kill a bunch of goblins just for being ugly. Because apparently elves in Magic the Gathering have two settings: oppressed people and utter bastards. Molimo! Molimo is a Marrow sorcerer from Llanowar. Now, what a Marrow sorcerer is, it is a wizard that is sort of the combination of an expression of nature's will and magic manifest in a sort of elemental being. It is not a magical entity that can just summon Mark Rosewater at the drop of a hat. Molimo fought the Phyrexians during their final invasion of Dominaria and managed to survive the war, and even exists in our current magic timeline and current magic world because when we returned to Dominaria in the 2018 set, Molimo actually gave the mage Joyra a special seed that would regrow the magical hull of the Weatherlight ship once she dredged it out of the oceans. Muldrotha. Okay, so speaking of Marrow sorcerers, Muldrotha is the spawn of Multani, who is the Marrow sorcerer of Yavimaya. But it may look a bit evil, may look a bit sus, big old green scorpion thing. But no, Muldrotha isn't an evil person. I mean, Muldrotha isn't a person. It's ostensibly a lot of slime. But Muldrotha's actually quite nice. He helped the crew of the new Weatherlight when we returned to Dominaria to sort of navigate the realms of Urborg and find their way to the Cabal stronghold and defeat the Cabal once and for all and save the day. Which, best slime in the game. I'm just gonna say it. Not even a slime. I'm almost certainly gonna get horrible comments about, that's not even a bloody slime, that is! Nadir. Nadir is ostensibly a diplomat from the elven nation of Duskenel, which, no, we have never come across before. Nadir is another character from a completely unknown plane. Duskenel is one of the many elven nations that exist within this unknown plane, and what Nadir's job is supposed to be is he's a diplomat being sent from the Duskenel to their neighbouring wood elf neighbours to sort of do a little bit of cultural exchange, do a little bit of diplomacy. What he's actually there for is to slowly teach the wood elves the ways of combat and assassination, because humans are encroaching on the elven territory and wood elves don't know how to fight back against them. So Nadir's like, listen, put down the flute, put down the panpipes, Frodo. I'm going to give you a hatchet. I'm going to teach you how to throw it at a man. Let's do this. Najila. Okay, so Najila is a warrior from Valor's Reach, or rather a warrior fighting in the arena that is Valor's Reach. Now, Valor's Reach is an arena based on the plane of Kylem. The plane of Kylem is a plane that has progressed past the need for great wars and horrible conquest, and now they settle all of their disputes in sort of ceremonial fighting, like cage matches all over the plane. And Valor's Reach is the coolest and the biggest and the most sort of prestigious Colosseum that you can fight in. And Najila is there to fight for honor, maybe? I don't actually think we're ever told why she's fighting, but she is there, so that's Najila. Nekazar. Okay, so Nekazar is a Lich King from yet another unknown plane who secretly remains the power behind the throne that he left when he died, sort of manipulating his old kingdom from behind the scenes. And many of his former enemies think that maybe being killed was actually part of Nekazar's plan, because he seems a lot more powerful now that he's a zombie wizard than he ever was when he was a human person. Nekazar is also my housemate go-to commander whenever we play EDH, and has given me effectively a great fear of drawing cards in multiplayer. Nevinral. Okay, Nevinral is a zombie king and failed frisbee salesman from the plane of Dominaria. Specifically, he used to be the king and overlord of the city of Urborg, back when it was sort of horrible metropolis, but it was actually a city and not just sort of like horrid swamp. But Nevinral used to be the king of there, but his ambitions reached past the walls of his kingdom, and he started invading neighbouring countries and continents and taking over local warlords and stuff like that, until one day, one of those neighbouring countries went, I don't want to be invaded by Nevinral. I'm gonna invade Nevinral. And Nevinral was like, okay, fine, and then put all of his soul into a magical object, broke it, and then detonated his entire kingdom, killing literally everybody in Urborg, which is kind of a solution. Nezahal. Nezahal is one of the primal dinosaurs of Ixalan, which was woken up when the Golden City of Ixalan, which is kind of like an allegory for El Dorado, I guess. When the Golden City was sort of like revealed to the world, all of these elder dinosaurs, these ancient kind of manifestations of one of the aspects of Ixalan, woke up and began doing sort of dinosaur-y stuff. Nezahal is the, as you could probably guess, the sort of like the aspect of water from Ixalan. Doesn't really have too much to do in the story, in the lore, but it's nice to know where the dinosaur comes from. Numa. Okay, Numa was the leader of Nissa, the Planeswalkers' home tribe, on Joraga. Yes, Joraga. Before she realised that she was a Planeswalker. Nissa, as a child, kept getting these visions of some horrible evil that's lurking deep within the heart of her world of Zendikar. She didn't know it yet, but she was being visited by visions of the Eldrazi that were stored in the mountains of Okum. And Numa was like, listen, Nissa, I don't want to have to do this, but you're kind of freaking everybody in the tribe out. We're going to have to ask you to leave. And inadvertently sent Nissa on her journey to becoming a Planeswalker, which means that it's sort of Numa's fault that Nissa ended up releasing the Eldrazi, like, in the first place. which, you know, it's a bit of a cell phone, but we all make massive mistakes now and again. Nymeris. Okay, Nymeris is a fairy trickster working for Una, Queen of the Fae, on the plane of Lorwyn. Una was the main antagonist from that story. You remember how I said Colfenor saw that the Great Aurora was coming and was one of the few people who knew about it? Well, Una, when the Great Aurora happened, was one of the few beings who remembered that there existed a world before Shadowmoor. When the Great Aurora happened, everyone sort of like lost their memory and just became horrible versions of themselves, except for Una, who retained her memory completely and was like, I'm just gonna rule this world now. Why be Queen of the Fae when I can be Queen of the world? And so Nymeris worked for Una, because I'm pretty sure Una died at the end of that story. But Nymeris's job effectively was just to go around frustrating mortals, like annoying them, playing pranks on them, getting them so frustrated that they would fall into deep, agonizing sleeps, where Una would then sneak up and steal all their dreams. Obeka is another new character that is being showcased in Commander Legends. She is a chronologist, possibly from Zendikar. It's not said in her lore online that she's from an unknown plane, but it's not confirmed that she's from Zendikar. However, Zendikar is the only plane that we have seen in the game thus far that has had chronologists, and also the background mountains look very sort of Zendikar. So that, again, purely speculation, but that's at least what I'm getting the vibe of from Obeka. Odric was a loyal holy soldier of the Lunarch Council on Innistrad. So remember, Innistrad, their god is Avacyn. The Lunarch Council is kind of like, sort of like the Vatican, I guess, like to extend the allegory. And when Avacyn became corrupted by Emrakul's influence, so did the Lunarch Council. But when Avacyn got corrupted, it was in a very literal sense. When the Lunarch Council got corrupted, it was much more in the sense of just a bunch of cultists showed up and were like, yeah, we've always been here. What are you talking about? We've always worshipped the demons of Skurzdag. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? And when Odric found out about both of these corruptions, he actually decided, I'm good, I'm gonna leave. Renounced all of his titles, renounced any affiliation he had to the council, went to join his mate Thalia in the final desperate bid to save Innistrad from the end of the world as they saw it in this form of Emrakul, this monster from beyond the stars. And they won in the end, so good for Odric. Prava is a Roman legionary cat from an unknown plane, but uniquely almost on this list, we actually have a little bit of information that sort of explains a little bit more about this plane. We actually have a character that we know canonically is from this plane. I'll explain more in a second. But Prava herself is from she's from a plane. She works with this army called the Steel Legion. She's actually one of the most effective commanders in that army, having the lowest mortality rate of any sort of section of army within the Steel Legion. However, she has a desperate and bitter rivalry with a character called Lycia, who we've actually seen in a Commander product before. She was the Mardu, sort of like lone wolf vampire legionnaire, which means that at some point in the future, there is a very good chance that we are going to get a cat Roman vampire plane, which is finally going to unite the three disparate tribes of furries, goths, and people who fucking love pillars. Prosh, big dragon, huge dragon, Dominarian dragon, mainly stays above and around the area of Care Keep, which is the sort of subterranean mountain fortress on Dominaria that is the home of the kobolds. Not really much else to say about Prosh. He's just a big old dragon. The kobolds sacrifice themselves to him as a god. He enables food chain combos really effectively. That's pretty much Prosh's whole deal. Queen Marchesa. Queen Marchesa is in the book. Queen Marchesa is in the book. Where is Queen Marchesa in the book? Marchesa de Amity, known as the Black Rose, learnt from an early age that if she wanted power, she would have to seize it for herself. Striking out on her own, her legitimate business provided cover as she gained connections through the criminal underworld. But Marchesa's ambitions didn't end at just being queen of a criminal empire. Finding someone who would assassinate the Ghost King Brago wasn't easy, but Marchesa's contacts put her in touch with the elusive ghost assassin Kaya. The king's reign was ended, allowing Marchesa to step in and inherit the throne through a succession decree of dubious origin. Radiant was the de facto leader of a plane called Serra's Realm, which used to be run by the angelic planeswalker Serra, but when Serra, fucked off on her own for a bit, I'm not entirely sure what happened, Radiant was kind of put in charge. However, Radiant wasn't nearly as powerful as Serra, and so sort of surreptitiously, Phyrexian forces began to corrupt Serra's realm, infiltrate it, kill people, turn them into agents and all that good stuff. One day, this powerful planeswalker called Urza, who we've talked about a little bit, but we'll talk about a lot more a little bit later, Urza turned up to this plane, saw all of the Phyrexian shenanigans going on, and was like, Radiant, listen, we need to get people out of Serra's realm, it's just going to collapse. And Radiant said no. So Urza, in probably the only good thing Urza has ever done, he actually surreptitiously ferried a bunch of refugees out of Serra's realm without her knowing about it, to make sure that they wouldn't be killed when the plane eventually collapsed because it was becoming very unstable. Radiant found out, she did not like that, she tried to kill Urza, she ripped out his eyes, but in doing so, Urza's eyes were actually made out of these two things called Power Stones. You had the Weak Stone and the Might Stone, I think. It was one or the other. When she ripped them out, there was a massive explosion which completely incinerated her, and in her final moments, she realised that she had in fact been duped. Which, like, magic lore is wild. An angel got blown up because she ripped someone's eyes out. Cool. Rakdos. Rakdos is an ancient demon, as you might be able to guess from his name. He is the guild leader of the Rakdos cult, but he also set up the Rakdos cult. He was the original Payrun, as I think is what they call them, of the guild, which makes him now the only remaining Payrun of a guild that is simultaneously its current guild leader. Like, a little while ago, Niv Mizzet was also one of those original Payruns. Niv Mizzet set up the Izzet League, but Niv Mizzet has since relinquished his rule of the Izzet to become like a big shiny lore dragon, and so Rakdos is now the last Payrun left running his own guild. Rakdos is a big demon, he loves to party, he loves to murder. A sexy Mediterranean man rode on him once. Make of that what you will. That's pretty much Rakdos in a nutshell. And if you'd like to know more, I've got a whole blooming video about the entire Rakdos cult, which you can it'll be somewhere on the script. Click the link. Ramos was a dragon engine under the command of Mishra, who was Urza's evil brother. But even as I'm saying that out, I really don't think Mishra qualifies as being Urza's evil brother. I think Urza's done a lot more bad stuff than Mishra, if I'm being fair. But Ramos is a dragon engine, which means he is some like combination between an aircraft carrier and a dragon. But Urza captured Ramos during the Brothers' War and reprogrammed him to not be a weapon of war anymore, but to be a refugee ship, this plane-shifting refugee vessel, which Urza then used when he kind of blew up half of the world in a massive magical nuclear explosion. He put a bunch of sort of like human and merfolk civilians who would have been caught in the blast zone on Ramos, and Ramos then plane shifted them to the plane of Mercadia. Unbeknownst to Urza, Mercadia actually already had Dominarians living on it in the form of the Thran, who were the people that Glacian and Rebek were a part of. Some Thran managed to escape Halcyon, the city of the Thran, before it got blown up during the final days of the Thran-Phyrexian War, and they'd found themselves on Mercadia as well. Now, these two groups of Dominarians, as time went on, grew and developed into their own societies. The humans and the merfolk the Ramos brought over eventually forgot where they came from, forgot their origin, forgot that they were refugees from another plane entirely, and started worshipping Ramos as a god, as a deity. Many years later, the crew of the Weatherlight, of which Gerard Capuchin was a member, crash-landed on Mercadia, and they discovered Ramos, talked to Ramos, and Ramos talked to them and said, "Oh, I remember Urza. We go way back." And so Ramos then helped the crew of the Weatherlight to defeat the Phyrexian forces that were on Mercadia and get all the good lads back home to Dominaria. Ravos was an oracle for Athreos, the god of passage on Theros. Ravos used to just sort of effectively help Athreos around the house. However, when Ravos's love died in battle, Ravos made a deal with the god, saying, "Listen, I know I've been your boy, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna help you directly shepherd souls straight to the underworld. I'm gonna be your right hand man, on the condition that once a year I get to visit my long-lost love." And Athreos agreed, but what he doesn't know is that Ravos is secretly plotting and scheming a way to get his love from out of the underworld and return them to the land of the living. Kind of a mix between Orpheus and Hermes, if you're familiar with sort of Greek lore and the ancient Greek sort of folklore. Reav is a dwarven artificer from the plane of Kaladesh, which is sort of this world that is crossed between Junji Ito's Uzumaki, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and India, if that makes sense. Reav became famous on his home plane for creating this sort of magical power gauntlet, effectively, that he released all of the schematics to the world, but no one could replicate his powerful fist as well as he could, and so he became famous, and that's pretty much all of his lore. He's literally like, I made a big fist, look at me go. That's all of his deep lore, unfortunately. Rayhan was the last Khan of the Abzan houses during the final days of the Khans, sort of in Tarkia of the past. Sarkhan went back, did all of his space magic dragon coma stuff with Ugin. Dragon Tempest started going crazy on the plane, and dragons eventually took it over. In the final days of the struggles between the Khans and the dragons, Rayhan was the last Khan of the Abzan, having taken over from Dagata, I believe his name was, who had ceded his power to Dragon Lord Dromoka for her to lead the Abzan houses in a new direction for the rest of time. Rayhan decided, nah, I'm gonna fight back, and so she went over to fucking Tattoo Lad's house and went, help me out, and then Tattoo Lad got blown up by an ice dragon, and Rayhan got killed by a poison dragon, I think. And then Dragons of Tarkia, the worst place in the multiverse, not currently run by Phyrexians, came into fruition. Rograch! Okay, Rograch's lore is wild. Okay, Rograch is a kobold. You remember when I was talking about Prosh from earlier? The kobolds of Carekeep? Rograch is one of those kobolds. The kobolds used to sacrifice themselves to Prosh. However, Rograch's father, Rogan, I hope I'm getting that right, there's like 3 H's in this word, decided, I don't want to sacrifice myself to Prosh. In fact, I think people should sacrifice themselves to me. And so Rohan then took over the Carekeep and became a tyrant. His son, Rogach, was like, I don't want that. I don't want to see my people sacrifice themselves to my father. This is wrong. I'm gonna start a resistance movement. And so he did. He built this grand resistance, this great grassroots movement to usurp his father, only to then replace him back with Prosh again as the rightful thing that all of the kobolds of Carekeep should be sacrificing themselves to. Like, y'all really didn't get any any critical theory trickling its way down into Carekeep, did you? Nah, I thought not. Sakashima. Okay, so Sakashima is a human master of disguise on the plane of Kamigawa. And he is this ultimate sneak. He sneaks around, he's snuck into everything.
You're a sneaking bitch! Please, I'm sorry. You.
Oh, he snuck everywhere. But now he's tired of sneaking. He's snuck all over the place, but nothing presents him with a challenge anymore, except one place that he has yet to sneak into, and that is the spiritual realm of the Kami themselves. Which I'm not sure how you sneak into there. Pretty sure they don't have like a lock on the door, but more power to you. It's good to have goals. Sengir. Baron Sengir is the ancient progenitor of the Sengir bloodline of vampires. Sengir is, when we last meet him, is stuck on this dying world of Ulgrotha. But you might be wondering, hang on, if Sengir is stuck on Ulgrotha and he's not a planeswalker, how come there are Sengir vampires on Dominaria? Well, Baron Sengir used to be summoned by planeswalkers and by powerful wizards as a sort of like ally, much in the same way as you would summon Baron Sengir by playing him from your hand. And every time he turned up to a new plane, he'd go, ooh, no vampires on here. And then he'd make a Sengir vampire or like several dozen. So that's how that happened. But he got stuck on Ulgrotha during one big wizard's duel and hasn't been summoned since. He's built up his sort of like mini empire, mini barony in this plane, and we last meet him accessing a dwarven portal in the bowels of his caves underneath his castle, which supposedly is going to let him walk out of this world and into another, although we haven't seen hide nor hair of him for many years, so there's a non-zero chance that the portal just instantaneously incinerated him. Saini! Okay, Saini is a Jeskai monk, a djinn, from the old and good Tarkia, who, like, I'm gonna just read the lore that Wizards has actually put for her. Saini believed that true enlightenment could only be discovered in the stillness of battle. Indeed, when fighting, she enters a trance-like state, where she claims she can hear the voices of the ancient dragons. Now, I know what Wizards is trying to go for there. They're trying to say that Saini, like, enters this serenity, and she still does all, like, you know, martial arts and high kicks and all that good stuff, but she's still while she's doing it. But when I read that, I can't help but imagine her just turning up and going, "You want to fight? Okay." And then just freaking out everybody because it's like, oh, this monk's turned up and she's not doing any. Why is she not doing any? What magic is that? We gotta run away! She's gonna do something crazy! And she's just standing there. I just love that. I think that's a really fun image. Sidar Kondo. Sidar is a Jumeran, I believe, I could be pronouncing that wrong, a Jumeran warlord from the plane of Dominaria, who had two sons. One of them was called Vuel, who was a lovely boy, Sidar's like biological son, and the other was actually Gerard Capuchin. Sidar Kondo adopted Gerard Capuchin as a young boy. Unfortunately, Sidar kind of took more of a liking to his adopted son than Vuel, and Vuel became so irate, so frustrated with his father, that he actually stepped out of this realm of reality, and when we next meet him, he had become corrupted by Phyrexia and turned into Volrath, the shapeshifter. So good on you, Sidar Kondo, for at least raising one child well. You're half a good dad. Slinvoda. Slinvoda is a Leviathan on Dominaria that holds on its back the capital city and, so like, I guess, entire home realm of the Voldanian Empire, who are this group of imperial merfolk who are making a big sort of resurgence in Dominaria after getting their shit handed to them by an entire species of crab people many hundreds of years ago. Slurk! It's a slime. It's not from... It doesn't say what plane it's from. It's just a slime. What... I work with what I'm given. SRAM. Ooh, Saram's in the book, Saram's in the book, Saram's in the book, we get to read the book. Saram. The dwarf Saram is a no-nonsense master engineer. As senior edificer, he is responsible for the complex infrastructure that supports Kaladesh's population. His greatest achievement is the Aether Hub, a complex structure that feeds the magical power source across his great city. Saram cares for his people more than politics, and when the Aether Hub was threatened by renegades, he prioritized people over property. He and his team worked tirelessly to repair the damage done by the recent revolution. Good on you, Saram, for having your priorities straight. And also, a big thank you to both Jay and Ellie, who has done a wonderful, wonderful job on this whole book. Love this. Got to put this on my coffee table in every house that I'm on. And also a big thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sending this to me for free. Although I'm still perplexed as to why Wizards continues to send me free product as I slowly radicalize my audience into believing that corporate entities and in fact the entire capitalist mode of production should no longer exist. But thanks! It's very nice. Look at the alternative cover. Look at her go. Love that for Avacyn. Tana. Tana is a lady who was abandoned in the woods as a child and was inexplicably adopted by a family of fungus things, saproling creatures, and so now, as an adult, she rewards and repays her adopted family by murdering anybody who comes into the woods and then feeding their corpses and their blood to the funguses. And I mean, whoever said blood was thicker than water, am I right? Tevesh Zat, one of the 9 Titans, which was kind of this emergency, I guess the closest thing I could come up with was like this emergency Justice League, this emergency Avengers of different Planeswalkers that the Planeswalker Urza gathered together in the final days of the Phyrexian Dominarian War as a sort of like last-ditch effort to save the plane from destruction. Included in these 9 Titans was, of course, Urza, who, you know, Brothers War, blew up half the world, kind of let the Phyrexians come into Dominaria in the first place when he and his brother opened up the portal underneath the ancient Thran city of Halcyon and let people like Gix find their way back onto Dominaria. So all of this is his fault anyway. The Planeswalker Freyles, who is an elf from Lanoir. Christina, who you'll remember was Jared's, with the Planeswalker that Jared fell in love with. Lord Windgrace from Urborg. Bolivar from somewhere. Daria from somewhere. Tasia of Arabia, which I have to assume he's from Arabia. The absolute pogchamp that is Commodore Guff. God, I'm gonna make a video about him someday. And Tevesh Zat, the only mono-black aligned Planeswalker in the entire bunch. And can you guess which one of them turned out to be evil? Tevesh used to be a guy called Tev Loneglade, and he was born on the coastline of Sarpedia on Dominaria many, many years before the Brothers' War ever took place. However, he became a Planeswalker as a human, and as time went on, he became more and more corrupted and changed and turned into this. He looks like a demon, but apparently it's like he's more akin to a dragon person. But that's sort of like he became corrupted. He became sort of like more influenced by draconic energies and influences, and this all came to a head when his sister died. That was sort of like the last straw that broke the camel's back, and Tev became Tevesh Zat, this sort of like the horrible tentacle monster that we now know and love. He was invited to join the 9 Titans, but plot twist, turned out to actually be working on the side of himself and the Phyrexians, betrayed the 9 Titans. He killed Daria and Christina, but double plot twist, Urza saw that coming, and so when Tevesh did that, he grabbed Tevesh, put him in a box, and then used all of his Planeswalker and life energy to power a massive bomb that he then dropped on Phyrexia with the hope of destroying Yawgmoth. Would have been nice for Urza to have done that to Tevesh before he killed 2 of the 3 women that were part of the 9 Titans, but let's be perfectly honest, this doesn't even make it into the top 20 shit things that Urza's done with his horrible life. Thalys. So Thalys is a brand new character from an unknown plane, and her lore isn't too descriptive. She woke up in a graveyard, she started talking to ghosts, and now she wanders around the world sort of spreading their stories around. Pretty much just a really hungover lead singer of some emo band from 2004. The Prismatic Piper. He's the magical doot boy. He's here when you need a doot, and he's gone when you do need a doot. That's his whole story deal. Thrasios. Thrasios is a merfolk from Theros who claims to have the magical blessing of the god of the sea, Thassa, herself. But nobody really fully believes him, and this has never actually been proven. However, with a price tag like that, there is some kind of magical bullshit happening with this merfolk, so I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Tiana. Tiana is a guardian angel from Dominaria, sort of created in the lineage of the the remnants of the angels from Serra's realm who made it to Dominaria before that plane collapsed. She was a guardian angel put in charge of protecting, no joke, an irrigation system, but somehow she even messed that up because she turned up late to her first appointment with the irrigation system and it was just on fire. So now she wanders Dominaria looking for her purpose in life, and then she stumbled across the Weatherlight when it was being sort of unsubmerged from the sea and found a kinship with the machine, and so now works as the guardian angel for the Weatherlight and also the Weatherlight's chief engineer. Togo. I have known about Togo for precisely 2 weeks, and if anything happens to him, I will murder everybody in my subscription list and then delete my channel. Togo is just a goblin on Dominaria who loves rocks, but like as a weapon. He believes that the rock is the superior form of martial warfare. You give him a spear, he's like, why have you got a long rock that like the deadly bit is on this end? The rock, the whole bit is a deadly bit. You give him a crossbow, he's like, wait, hang on, so you pull this thing and suddenly it's no longer useful? Rock, always useful. Rock can be thrown, rock can be used as melee weapon. You show him the destructive force that Baron unloaded upon an entire continent on Dominaria just in grief of the death of his daughter, and Togo will go, yeah, but like 40 rocks could have probably done that. Togo is just obsessed with rocks, and he is my favourite character from this entire set. I had no idea he existed before now, and I'm so glad that I now know he does exist. Tormod. Okay, Tormod is an old magic character, not as in like ancient creature, but as in we first were told of Tormod's existence on a card way back in the dark in 1994, and weirdly enough, that card, Tormod's Crypt, was the only time we ever got any mention of the character in any lore, on any cards, in anything, until literally this month. And so who Tormod is he was this petty baron of a small town next to the city of Al-Sur. I hope I'm getting that right. And he just like was stealing a bunch of corpses from around the city. The church caught wind. They sent a bunch of inquisitors to his little barony. They broke in. They killed Tormod. He was sort of being guarded by loads and loads of undead, which was kind of a big giveaway to the fact that maybe this is the guy that's been stealing all the corpses. So they killed him, popped him in a tomb. Someone else inherited the land, but the grave robberies kept going. And so everyone was like really confused. Why are these grave robberies still going on? Tormod's dead. They went to Tormod's crypt to look for him, and then, as the card says, they found an empty grave. And Tormod just loved stealing corpses so much, he died and then came back as a corpse just to keep stealing corpses. You've got to admire the dedication. Tromokratis. Big Kraken lives on Theros. Babading, babadooey. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. Tymna the Weaver. Tymna the Weaver once was a warrior of Meletis on Theros. There's loads and loads of Theros characters in this set, actually, now I'm like reading it out loud. But after a chariot accident left her blind, she renounced her ways of being a warrior and instead took up a sort of like magical apprenticeship with the Fates of Theros, which are obviously allegories for the three Fates in sort of like ancient Greek folklore, and she pretty much works as like their clerk or something now. It's not super clear, but she's the apprentice to the Fates. Tulia Bearclaw, a trusted warrior from the new and terrible Tarkir. Tulia is like one of the chief hunters for the Dragon Lord Dromoka, I believe. Yeah, Dragon Lord Dromoka, who is the new leader of the sort of like the northern people of Tarkir. And her whole deal is she raised a little bear from a little cub to being a great, massive warrior bear, and she now rides it into battle to go and hunt meat to feed a big dragon. That's her and the entire of the like Ataka humans' whole lives now. And it's so sad, and it's so boring, and I really, really hate Dragons of Tarkir. Vial Smasher the Fierce, and now to sort of like flip it onto the other side, the only good thing about Dragons of Tarkir. So Vial Smasher used to be friends with Sarkhan, the planeswalker from Tarkir, who then changed Tarkir's timeline. However, in the Tarkir, the good Tarkir, Vial Smasher was unfortunately dead. She'd been killed a couple of months ago in like this horrible, horrible raid that had happened. And when Sarkhan came back to the new and bad Tarkir and returned to his old clan, he found that Vial Smasher was alive again. And Vial Smasher was, you know, throwing vials of dragonfire and just having a grand old time and living her best life. And once again, a goblin's minor appearance near the beginning of a story is the only good thing about the narrative of an entire Magic the Gathering set. Wyleth. On top of having a stupid name, Wyleth is a swordsman from an unknown plane who one day stumbled across a sword that fell from the heavens themselves. And when he picked it up, it sort of like etched fiery tattoos on his arm, binding him forever to this blade. And now he wanders his world searching for new warrior techniques, determined to learn more than any other person has ever done before him. Xenagos. Alright, you'll probably know who Xenagos is, but just to sort of break it down for you if you don't, Xenagos was a satyr planeswalker from the plane of Theros. Again, loads of Theros characters in this set, who went on this big sort of multiversal bender, went around all these different planes, got drunk, had a grand old time, but came back to Theros completely bored. He was so bored of being a planeswalker, he'd done everything he wanted to do, and so decided to become a god. He did this great revel, ascended into godhood, kind of influenced Elspeth, another planeswalker, to kill her lover Daxos, and then Elspeth, in return, killed Xenagos with her spear. And that is the entire of Xenagos' story. Yuriko. Yuriko is a ninja assassin from Kamigawa who spends her life going around the countryside, beating up landowners and petty lords, and fighting in the name of ending oppression and injustice. Thank you, Comrade Yuriko, for your service and praxis. Yurlok. Yurlok is a Viashinu from Jund who hunts prey by chasing them into really dangerous locales like narrow ravines or entire lava flows, and then cornering them there and killing them. Does this put Yurlok in danger? Yes. Does he get hurt? Do members of his hunting troop die? Of course they do. Does Yurlok care? Does this look like the face of a Viashinu who gives a shit? Zara! Zara is a charismatic sky pirate, not from Ixalan, but from Kaladesh. Pirates exist on Kaladesh and they fly around on these literal flying ships. It's all very cool. Zara herself is a very charismatic sky pirate, in so much that she is sort of like the face of recruitment for the sky pirate renegades who are leading who led a rebellion against the consulate of Girapur, which is the sort of like the capital city of Kaladesh. She was so charismatic, in fact, that not only did sort of unaffiliated and sort of people with renegade sympathies join her cause, but also consulate members of the protection forces also swapped sides and joined her just after listening to one or two of her speeches. Zedru. Zedru was born to a warrior family, but didn't really like the whole might makes right, we must fight every day and learn to be great warriors sort of stuff that society was pushing onto her. She grew up quite lithe, quite gentle, and indeed, when a plague racked her home village, Zedru sacrificed herself in order to heal and take care of the people who were sick. She put herself in great danger. She indeed survived and is now revered by her village and the wider society as this new icon of a different way of orchestrating your ideology and orchestrating your outlook on life. And we love Zedru. She's so sweet. And finally, Zur the Enchanter, who effectively is a really intimidating fail dad. Zur existed on the in the final, hopefully, final Ice Age that sort of racked Dominaria. Again, thank you, Urza, for the first two Ice Ages as well. Zur is this powerful wizard who's, searching for immortality as powerful wizards want to do, and began amassing a force and a following to follow in his quest for immortality. He was then defeated by the ancient mage Joda and retreated out to the great wastes and the borderlands that he existed in, and everyone was waiting for Zur to come back. They were thinking, oh, Zur's gonna bring back something terrible. He's gone off. He's gonna amass his forces, and then he just never came back. He was like, he just died out there or something. And several years later, all of his followers sort of sheepishly turned up to the Alliance forces and went, yeah, the thing with the other guy didn't work out. Is it okay if we kind of crash? Is that all right? And that's pretty much all of Zur's lore. And that's all of the characters in Commander Legends explained. Hopefully, unless I've missed some, but I've been recording for, collectively, this took me 8 hours to record. It shouldn't have taken me that long, frankly. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to Channel Fireball for sponsoring this video. Thank you to all my lovely patrons who have been making this channel possible, making it possible for me to be doing this full time. And please stick around in the credits. Maybe I'll say something at the end for you lovely people who stick around. But for now, I'm gonna wander off screen and read all of the lovely people who donate to me on Patreon. So big thank you to all my patrons, and especially my $10 patrons, who include... Thank you, Past Connor, for completely forgetting that you have two people to thank for this wonderful, wonderful video. First off, I'd like to thank Amy the Amazonian for lending her voice to be the character of Ich-Tekik's daughter. Wonderful, wonderful voice acting there from Amy, and please do go check her out. She's a wonderful fellow Magic the Gathering YouTuber and fellow Magic the Gathering Twitch streamer. Just a bloody charmer, that Amy the Amazonian. I also want to thank Atari Panther, who was one of the recipients for a little fundraising giveaway I did last month, and who lent their voice to be Rohan or Rogak, or whichever one it was, the kobold. Theirs was the growlings and grumblings that you heard during that section. So thank you to those two wonderful, wonderful people. And now to thank my wonderful $10 patrons, who include Seventh Guest, A Fool of Five Colours, A Gay American Couple, Ace of Heartsu, Adam Gable, Addy DC, AJ Ingram, Alex Berman, Alex Flynn, Alex Wood, Alice Paralis, an alt-right sleeper agent who gives money to communist Bukka Idaka, open parentheses, probably Tybalt's Versona, close parentheses, an Umbreon Pastry, Anthony Baker, Anthony G. Reap, Bambi Roper, Ben Pike, Biscuit Blade, Blake Evers, Bradley Rose, Brian Dunn, Bruno, Captain Colostomy, Carl Comstock, Conflicted Psyches, Chase Beard, Krista Voss, Suro Saressa, Cloud Chaser Kestrel, Causa, Corwin Stoddard. I am saying this only because our global economic system does not intrinsically support artistic expression. Darius Rudeminer, Deadpan Goff, Dollar Wen, Drew Pierce, Dystopico, Exidian, Eldritch Changeling, Erica Hamel, Ethan Abraham, Felix Morton, Fiona Perry, Future Beagle, Grey Days, Hooper Dupp, In Response I Bolt Myself, Jake Colburn, Jessica Settle, Joey DeBroder, John Solog,
Joshua M. Stephan, Julie Bunn, Carlia Whithart, Kansas de Jesus, Kate B, Kevin Quinn, Kurdape Apologizer, Leliana, Lily of the North Star, literally a ghost that pushes over candles, Linnea, Mike Mavramatis, Morden Kainen's Disjunction, Mr. Skolaton, Nadav Benjamin, No Bluffs, Ori, Puck, Raghavar Cavalli, Riley Everett, Ross King, Rowan Brown, Magic Arcanum, Sean Caius O'Reilly, Sasha Evelyn Francis, Silent Celine, Sir Shaunsey, Sky Johnson, Sage Morrison, Some Twink that simps super hard for Spice, Swan Hunter, Tima Punk Fraley's impersonator, Taylor Street, the Best Swans player in Montreal, Tired_Crow, Totally a Spy, Travis K, True Lily, Vittorio Grace, Vladimir Gorvikov, Voice of All, Wicked Haiku, Xenon, Zada's Ludo Narrative Dissonance, and Zaileron. And thank you to all of the rest of my absolutely wonderful patrons. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the lovely folks who have lent their voice to this particular video, or voice or unintelligible growlings. And as always, stay spicy. Oh. God.
You're still here? It's over. Go. Go watch H-Bomber Guy's Pathologic video again. Leave!